What's up, everyone? Welcome to the third episode of NU Takes. My name is Michael Bartholomew.
And I'm DD Jim, and we're here to give our own hot takes and spicy opinions about all things Northwestern sports.
So, the NFL Draft is here. It's finally the week, and we have been previewing some of the bigger names that Northwestern will most likely be heard called out, such as Rashawn Slater, Greg Newsome, and Paddy Fisher over the past few weeks. But here is a time for us to highlight some of the other players that may end up being Saturday selections.
So, at the helm of last year's offense and the leader of Northwestern's return to success in the eyes of many, Peyton Ramsey is first up on our list. The graduate transfer played well in 2020, but while he didn't put up superstar numbers, he seems like he has athletic tools to potentially land a spot in the league. So, Michael, what do you think of Ramsey's odds are of hearing his name called or just making an NFL roster in general?
As much as Northwestern fans love Peyton Ramsey and the things he did in 2020, I don't have very high confidence for him in the league to really even make a roster in his first year. I mean, you mentioned it. It wasn't exactly superstar numbers. 12 touchdowns, 8 interceptions won't get you far. And if his decision-making doesn't improve and his arm strength, then I don't really see him having a place in the league. Sure, he has the athletic ability. He has the ability to take off and run. He does have the general stature of a prototypical quarterback, but because of the lack of arm strength and overall just meh play last year, remember, a lot of the hype around him was because Northwestern was winning games, and that wasn't solely because of him. It was because of the defense and the fact that he was just playing better than 2019 Northwestern quarterbacks was just a monstrosity. So when you put in comparison, sure, he was pretty good for the Cats, but I don't think based on his play last year, it'll give him a very big shot to succeed in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think that Ramsey, at least for Northwestern and just in general over the course of his college career, he was kind of the perfect game manager, but at the college level. Like you said, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, not exactly the best ratio. And I think the one glaring thing that stands out is that he only had one completion of over 30 yards. Obviously Northwestern's offense last year wasn't electric, but at the same time, at the NFL level, you're going to want to see quarterbacks being able to make tough throws to receivers that are big plays, not just hitting receivers on slants or for like 10 15 yard gains. And I think that's just something that Peyton Ramsey hasn't been able to show as 4 years playing college. I think that he does display some good pocket awareness, some good intangibles. I think he senses pressure well. He remains poised under the rush. In terms of decision making, he's not bad, but he lacks a lot of just the key qualities that make up an NFL quarterback. And I think that a lot of NFL teams see that, and I think that's the reason why he's not getting too much NFL buzz. In the Big Ten championship against Ohio State, he had a solid first half, and then he can really put anything together in the second. And in Northwestern's other loss in the season against Michigan State, he just couldn't put anything together for Northwestern to overcome what was really a mediocre defense. So just because there's not a lot to show, especially in his last season, I think that the odds of him getting selected are really, really low.
Mm-hmm. But moving on to the defensive side of the ball, going to talk about safety J.R. Pace, who's gained kind of a similar level of buzz where he's shown up in a few mock drafts, but nothing super consistent. Didi, what do you think the chances for Pace to be a contributor in the NFL?
I think that Pace is in a really similar position to Ramsey. He's shown some qualities that are likable in terms of being how they would translate to the NFL. He's a leader. He's a proven leader. But at the same time, he's played 4 years for Northwestern, and while he's put up good stats, right, in 40 career games, he has 169 tackles, 8 interceptions, 23 passes defended. He just really hasn't shown that next level athleticism and instincts that would take him, I think, to the next level. I mean, he ran a 4.71 at his pro day in the 40-yard dash, which just isn't really going to cut it, in the NFL. But at the same time, I have seen some mocks, especially the team like the Colts, show interest in J.R. Pace. Per Justin Mello of the Draft Network, the Colts are really interested in potentially taking him as a day 3 selection or even as an undrafted free agent after the draft. And I think that given the opportunity, I think that J.R. Pace could make an NFL roster, but I think that he just doesn't have enough upside to be taken even towards the end of the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, outside of the big three of Slater, Newsome, and Fisher, I like Pace's chances the best out of anyone to have a half successful career in the NFL. I think that sure, like his pro day numbers were not great, but I think his leadership on the field really evens that out. Where he was a great leader. He was the leader of a top defense for Northwestern last year, or one of them, leader of the secondary. He commanded that defense with authority, and he was a solid player through and through. Sure, his 2019 was not a standout season, but 2018 was a great year from him, was an all Big Ten honorable mention. And then 2020, he had another pretty solid year with 41 tackles. And so I think we've seen flashes of pace, that the tools are there. It's just a matter of putting them together. And I have confidence in him to be, I don't think he's going to end up being a starter in this league. I think that's an unrealistic expectation to have of a guy who isn't even guaranteed to go day 3, but I do have confidence that he can make it up past the practice squad and be a guy who can hang around in the NFL, be in an NFL roster, but he'll be solid enough as a tackler and as a leader and as just a smart all around safety to last a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as we all want to see him hear his name called in the draft, I think that, in this era where, we're seeing everyone run 4.3s and 4.4s at their pro day, I think that Pace, he just doesn't, he didn't perform well enough at his pro day, and he doesn't have enough of a college resume to kind of back up the sort of upside that a lot of teams, I think, are looking for, especially towards the end of the draft. And then in terms of, any other players outside of Pace or Ramsey, who else do you think has a chance to not just potentially get drafted or just, get signed and make a roster?
Well, I think out of the names remaining that we haven't talked about, the one that stands out in terms of buzz is Ernest Brown IV. I personally was not incredibly impressed with him last season. Sure, his 8.5 tackles for loss were pretty good. I mean, that's a great number to have as a defensive end, but the 1 sack was a big concern for me. And his overall just like lack of consistent pressure that he brought was something that I don't think will fare him well in his NFL tryouts. And I could see him having a similar role as like a Tyler Lancaster has with the Packers, just on a lesser degree, where he's there just primarily to stop the run. And he may not, like Tyler Lancaster, I'm going to be honest, may not be great at it, but he's there for it. And he's half solid at it. I think Ernest Brown could float around for a few years. I don't really see him having a ton of potential. And honestly, I didn't really understand the day 3 buzz that he was getting. But I think there is potential that he can make some practice squads, bounce around for a few years, but I don't see a long-term career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. As much as I want to see Ernest Brown succeed and prove me wrong, I really think that out of these these players, I think he's maybe not the least likely, but potentially the least deserving of a roster spot. Not to say he's not talented. He had a great career for Northwestern and for Pat Fitzgerald. But I think that, he came into Northwestern as one of, their highest recruits of all time. He's a 4-star, top 20 defensive end. And he really was inconsistent, during his 4 years here. I mean, you mentioned it. He had a solid senior season, earning all Big Ten honorable mention. But, he considering his size and his athleticism, the kind of numbers he can put up at his pro day, I think that just really hasn't translated to the game level. And I think that just with 4 years of development, I think we haven't really seen, what we should have seen, versus someone like Gaz, who came in and, was kind of a mid 3-star and, worked his way up because of, being able to like build up the skills to, fake out defenders. I think that Brown, because, like, as is shown by, the sack, the singular sack on the season, just doesn't have those kind of traits and qualities. And I think that's ultimately going to be the reason why he's not going to be able to sustain a long NFL career.
Mm-hmm. Another name that, I mean, this is clear, just Northwestern bias showing, but a guy that I do have a little bit of faith in that could make a small impact in the NFL is Blake Gallagher. The duo of Paddy Fisher and Blake Gallagher was so dynamic for Northwestern for so many years. And Blake Gallagher, such a short tackler in my eyes. He's such a consistent tackler that I think that could translate, even though his game is isn't really fit for the modern day NFL, running a 40 of 4.76 as his high, similar to pace. That's just not where the NFL wants it to be. But I do think he could be a solid middle linebacker backup where he'll just be able to tackle, like just do what he does best and just tackle. He was okay in coverage. I didn't think he was the worst coverage linebacker that I've seen last season. And the tackle numbers are outstanding, really. 84 tackles in 9 games is superb. So I think Blake Gallagher does have a shot just based on his hard-nosed work ethic and his ability to just do all the little things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, potentially some of your Northwestern bias definitely showing. I think just with a lot of these guys in general, I know the whole Reese Davis thing was a big thing in the season. But I think that to an extent, it is sort of true, if I'm being honest, that, Northwestern, at least, the players they have entering the draft this year are just, they're not, they're not the top of the pack in terms of just raw athletic ability, in terms of speed, in terms of quickness, in terms of strength. And those are all, really, really key factors. That's a baseline to have in the NFL. Obviously, that's not to say that someone like Blake Gallagher is not going to be able to make an NFL roster. But I think that, like you said, running that 4.76 in the 40 this pro day, really, really hurts his draft stock. And it hurts, the chances of him even being able to get signed as an undrafted free agent.
Mm-hmm. Well, the faith is certainly clear, at least on my end. I mean, we both have some faith in some of these players. It's clear Northwestern bias, but we want to see our Evanston boys succeed. So we will see, most likely on Saturday, but Thursday where Slater will go, where Newsome will end up. And then on Saturday, where will Fisher go? Where will Pace go? Will he hear his name called? Where will Ramsey hear his name called? Will a guy like RCB, Ernest Brown, or Blake Gallagher hear his name called? We'll have to wait and see. From NU Takes,
Yeah.
I'm Michael Bartholomew.
And I'm BD Jen.
We'll see you all next week. Happy draft week.